The structure of a story is incredibly important, but there is so much information out there about it, so many books, so many theories, that it can be a little confusing or it can be unclear as to why we need it to begin with. So let me help you keep it simple. Hello everyone, my name is Eduardo. I've been a freelance book editor for 5 years and I'm starting this YouTube channel in order to share some of the things that I've learned along the way. I hope you find this useful. So, why do we even need a story structure to begin with? And asking that falls a little close to the plotter versus pantser argument, which isn't something new, right? People have been arguing one way or the other since before humans even knew how to write, probably. So, that doesn't really matter all that much at the end of the day. I'm not here to continue that debate, but I'm here to ask you to think of it in the following way. Your story is a house. Building a house is an art, same as writing. A good house can be really beautiful and can create really strong emotions in the same way that a good story can. And all houses will have a basic set of features, such as walls, windows, a door, and hopefully at least one bathroom, right? And those elements are there just to make sure that the house works properly. Many people who refuse to think about the structure of their story do it because they think it will limit their creativity and it will strangle their story into something generic. But that's not the case. In the same way that an architect isn't limited by having to include doors or a wall in their design, your book will not be limited by having to follow a certain structure. It's the opposite. Having a basic structure will help your book work in the way it should. It will be your walls, your door, your kitchen, your bathroom. It will help your story stand on its own. So, you can be a plotter, you can be a pantser. People make it work all the time, and for sure, you can make it work. But I need you to keep this always in mind. Regardless of your approach to writing, story structure is always there, and we should be aware of it. All that being said, let's talk about the structure itself. This can be overwhelming because, like I mentioned before, there are so many examples out there, so many books, so many theories, that it's a little difficult to choose one. And remember, this is just the basics. If you start to look into story structure in more depth, we start to get into different concepts like inciting incidents, plot points, pinch points, arguments, resolutions, plot twists, epiphany, analysis, experiment, fun and games, all is lost, getsu, turning points, and oh god, just leave me alone, right? It's too much. It's too much, I get it. Sometimes it's fun to get into all of it and learn all these concepts, but it's not necessary. So let me help you keep it simple. I'm going to boil down story structure into just a handful of elements. We are going to split the story into 4 parts. Why 4? That's easy, because each one is going to be 25% of the story. Each one is going to be equally important, and that's it. We don't really need anything more complex than that. 4 parts, equal value, and that's all we need. But what do we include in each section? It's not simply enough to say, we're going to split the story into 4 sections and roll credits, right? No, that's not enough. Each part is going to have an objective, and we need to talk in depth about that. So, part 1, the beginning. This is all about setup. Here we're going to introduce our main character, their lives, their backstory, and what's at stake really, which is one of the most important parts of a story. World building is also incredibly important. Here we need to show the reader what's interesting about this world that we want to share with them. We need to explain why this world is worth exploring. This is why structure isn't a limiting factor in the way you write your story. Structure will only give you a basic guide of what you need to include. But the way you go about it is really up to you. You can be as crazy as you want, you can be as flexible as you like. As long as you remember that you need to include the main character, you need to introduce your world effectively, and you need to show the stakes involved. There is one important question that you need to answer in part 1, and that is, what can your protagonist lose if something bad happens? Also, the beginning of the story is not the place to make the antagonist and the protagonist go against each other. Not yet. If anything, you are going to show glimpses of the antagonist in order to hook the reader. That's it. We are not interested in ruining our protagonist's lives. Not yet. Let's take Star Wars Episode 4, for example. From the beginning of the movie, we know about the Empire, and Luke, the protagonist, of course, he knows about the Empire too, but they haven't faced each other, not yet, and that doesn't happen in part 1. So, we need to introduce the main character, our world, and the stakes involved, and make it interesting while at the same time not showing the main antagonist in full force. If that sounds difficult, it's because it is. Many writers tend to spend a lot of time in the beginning sections of the story precisely because it's pretty hard to make it work and make it interesting without showing the main conflict of the story. But you must resist the temptation of showing the main antagonist too early, because stories are about change, and introducing the main antagonist too early will create a big change in the protagonist. But that change will not be meaningful enough if your readers don't know what came before it. You need to take your time. You need to let your characters come to life before everything goes to hell. In fact, that's how you know that part 1 is about to be over. Part 1 ends with the arrival of the main antagonist or the main conflict. Here's where everything gets flipped upside down and your characters' lives change. And I do mean it, change. Your protagonist's life changes for the worse, and there is no way for that character to go back to the way things were before. If we take Star Wars, for example, the end of part 1 is the moment where Luke realizes his family was killed. Before this moment, if you really think about it, Luke has been learning all this stuff about Obi-Wan and the Jedi and whatnot, but none of that really forces any change in Luke's life. He could simply say, you know what, Obi-Wan, I don't really care about this crap, screw you, I'm going home. That would be pretty boring, yes, but it was an option that Luke had until the stormtroopers find his home. After that, there is no going back, even if he wanted to. Also, notice that this is Luke's first true encounter with the Empire. Before this, we knew the Empire was out there doing horrible things, but Luke hadn't suffered personally from it. Not yet, not until the end of part 1. So, effectively, part 1 ends with the character being forced to face a difficult problem or run from it, escape. And that's it. The status quo is over and there is no going back, even if the protagonist wants to. Part 2 is about your character's response to those changes that were forced upon them by the antagonist at the end of part 1. And when I say antagonist, I want to make it clear, it can be anything. It can be a bad guy, it can be a situation that needs to be fixed, it can be a danger that the protagonist needs to escape from, or it can be something more personal, like an emotion. It can be like depression or maybe love. This can happen a lot in romances, for example. The important thing to understand here is that the antagonist, whatever it is in your story, it's already here and it's causing trouble for your characters. So, how are your characters going to react to this new threat? That's really up to you and the story you are writing. It depends. Your characters can hide, can try to find a solution, can try to fight back. There's only one important thing to remember here in part 2. Whatever response your characters try to approach, it needs to be flawed. If your characters hide, they need to be found. If your characters try to find a solution, it needs to fail. If your characters try to fight back, they need to lose. We cannot allow the protagonist to succeed in any meaningful way. Any attempt to fix anything needs to fail. Every step forward needs to be met with 2 steps backward. And you'll see that this way is quite flexible. You can do really anything you want as long as you follow that general guideline and as long as your protagonist's response to the antagonist is believable. You can even combine different types of responses. In Star Wars, for example, Luke's response was to join Ben Kenobi and help him deliver R2 and the Death Star plans to the rebels, which is a perfectly good objective for them and can be seen as both trying to escape and trying to fix the problem. Perfect. That's a very valid response from them. Also, this is a great example of what I mentioned before about not allowing your characters to make good progress, because in the movie they managed to escape Tatooine, but then they realize that Alderaan was destroyed and they get captured by the Empire. All these trial and error and all these flawed responses should take around 25% of the story. And then we approach the midpoint and the end of part 2. The midpoint, this is the key thing to remember, is defined by a recontextualization of the main goal. Whatever your characters were trying to do did not work or didn't do enough to fix anything substantial. Or maybe their situation changed so much that a new goal has been imposed upon them. In Star Wars' case, the main goal now is to escape the Death Star alive. You'll often see people refer to the midpoint as the plot twist of the story, and that's correct. But it can be a little confusing because some of the most memorable plot twists, the ones that people remember years and years later, they don't happen in the middle of the story. Think of the Vader reveal at the end of episode 5, or the Bruce Willis situation at the end of The Sixth Sense. These are all incredibly impactful plot twists, but they never happen in the middle, they happen towards the end. So what's the deal with that? Here's the key thing to understand when thinking about this. A story can, and usually does, contain multiple plot twists. The one you include in the middle is simply one of them. A plot twist simply means that the characters have learned something new or have been thrusted into a new situation that forces them to change their goals drastically. In Star Wars, the midpoint plot twist is that they get caught by the Empire, right? And the new goal is now to survive, to escape alive the Death Star. Whatever they were doing before no longer takes priority. And that's how part 2 ends. Part 3 is about the protagonist facing the problem with an improved set of skills and a better understanding of what the situation really is. Up until this point, the protagonist has been stumbling around and improvising, or in Luke's case, he's been mostly guided by other people and their efforts. But in part 3, that's over. Here's where your characters become more proactive, right? And they start to try to fix things in a more effective way. They are finally using their skills more efficiently, and they are allowed now to start to make some progress towards a resolution. They are not allowed to fix things completely yet, but we are making progress. If part 2 was about taking one step forward and two back, then part 3 is the reverse. It's about taking two forward and only one back. In Star Wars, this is shown by the heroes infiltrating the Imperial base and rescuing the princess, then losing Obi-Wan, but escaping alive to deliver the Death Star plans to the rebels. Not everything goes perfectly, but that's the point. The protagonists are still struggling, but they are getting a few things done right this time. So, this is the main thing about part 3. It's all about this very rocky but steady progress for your characters. And you can show that in many different ways depending on the story you are writing. If your characters are action heroes, maybe they get to win more fights now. If they are detectives, they get to focus on actual clues instead of red herrings. If your story is a romance, maybe your character starts to find ways to get more attention from their crush. Things like that. It's all about the little victories that are going to start to pile up towards a resolution. Then, at the very end of part 3, we'll have another shift in context, another scene that will change the perspective and the goals of our protagonist, another plot twist. Here's where all those memorable scenes that everyone remembers happen. The Empire Strikes Back Vader reveal, it happens at the end of part 3. The Sixth Sense revelation, it happens at the end of part 3. The Fight Club plot twist, at the end of part 3. Every Shyamalan movie plot twist you've ever seen, they all happen at the end of part 3. In practice, this new plot twist is not much different than what happens at the end of part 1 or 2. It's simply just a change in context again, a new piece of information, a new situation that changes the character's goals or their understanding of what they really need to do. The difference now compared to parts 1 and 2 is that now all the characters have all the information they need, all the tools they need to attack the problem directly and actually succeed this time. So they have all the information, and as a result, some of the biggest secrets of the story are revealed. The writer is finally lifting the veil and letting you see what's happening behind all of the problems that were in the story. And because of that, some of the plot twists towards the end are more impactful, are more memorable, because you finally see all that the writer was trying to hold back from you, right? And that can be quite shocking depending on the kind of story you are writing. In Star Wars Episode 4, the plot twist isn't as mind-blowing as in Episode 5, for example, but it's still a great example of something else I wanted to talk about. The plot twist, these plot points that I've been talking about at the end of part 1, 2, and 3, they don't necessarily have to be a single scene. They can be a combination of different scenes if they happen relatively close to each other. In that movie, the final plot point is a combination of Obi-Wan dying, the Empire learning about the location of the rebel base, and the heroes arriving at Yavin to learn the specifics about the Death Star's weakness. This combination of scenes does two things. First, it takes away Luke's mentor and his opportunities for the future. He can no longer just follow Obi-Wan and keep training until he's ready. He's on his own now, and his options are not many aside from joining the rebels. But the second thing it does is to actually give the rebels an opportunity to win. The Death Star's plans reveal the weakness, and the Alliance and Luke know exactly what they have to do in order to destroy it now. This is what the last plot point here in part 3 is meant to do. It gives the protagonist a means to succeed while at the same time putting them against the wall. They are now in a situation where they must do or die because time is running out. In our example, the Empire is closing in, and they have the means to destroy entire planets. So the heroes need to do something right now, or otherwise the story is over. And that's how we reach part 4 and the end of the story. But before we even start with this, one thing to remember. At this point in the story, all the pieces should be into place already. Your characters should have all the information they need in order to finally attack the problem and succeed. There should not be any major character introductions or major plot twists involved in this section. Part 4 is all about using the tools we already have in order to end the story. What I've seen a few times is that writers reach part 4 and they still want to introduce new characters and more exposition, and that can work on very specific cases, but most of the time it doesn't. Your readers want catharsis. They want to see what you've been building up towards all this time. They want their payoff, not more exposition. So, part 4, it's really all about your characters putting all their knowledge and skills together and finally trying to fix the problem for good. Star Wars, of course, does this perfectly. The last piece of exposition we get is at the end of part 3, in the Rebel Brief, where they discuss the Death Star's weakness and how to exploit it. After that, it's all about the characters going straight for the goal, and the antagonist, of course, trying to stop them. And here you often get bonus points if your main goal is really difficult and your heroes almost fail. That's more exciting too. Also, a very important thing to remember here, your protagonist should be instrumental in trying to fix the problem. And I want to be careful with my wording here. I'm not saying that the main character should be the only one trying to fix the problem, but I'm saying that most of the effort should fall on the main character's shoulders. They can be helped, they can be rescued at some point, or they can even die trying to fix the issue. But at the end of the day, when you ask who was the main responsible for the victory, it needs to be the protagonist. It was Luke Skywalker, the one who destroyed the Death Star after all, even if the whole thing was a group effort. It might seem like a no-brainer, but please keep it in mind. I have seen many people reach the end only for a secondary character to win the day and leave the hero looking like a tourist in their own story. And by that point, why? Why are we even following that character to begin with? And that's it. You probably realized that there isn't much to it in part 4. Just a couple of things to remember. Very important things, but just a few. And that's a good thing. It gives you more of that flexibility I've mentioned at the beginning. It lets you end the story in any way you want. Part 4 is really all about playing with the groundwork that you've done in previous sections in order to end your story in a satisfying way. And for that reason, and for that kind of freedom, many people find the ending a lot easier to write. And a lot more fun too, because you've probably been waiting for this moment for a long while you write your story. So it's really just about enjoying what you've done and what you can do with your characters at this point. So, to summarize, we have 4 parts of equal length and equal importance. Part 1 is about the setup, introducing characters, how they live, and their world in general. Here we introduce the stakes of the story. Part 1 ends when an event changes the protagonist's life for the worse, and this change is not reversible. Your character cannot decide to go back to their previous life. That's not an option anymore. Part 2 is about the response your characters have in this new situation that they are forced to face. They can escape, they can try to fight back, or they can try to fix it, but ultimately they must fail. Remember, one step forward, two steps backwards. Part 2 ends with a recontextualization of the main goal. New events or new information has been introduced, which forces the characters to change their goals, or perhaps even think again about the whole conflict. Maybe the enemy isn't who they thought it was. Part 3 is about using this new and improved understanding in order to start making progress towards a final goal. The progress is still rocky and with plenty of setbacks, but it is progress. Remember, 2 steps forward, only 1 back. Part 3 ends with another plot point, a new situation or a new piece of information that changes things for the protagonists and allows them to create a plan that actually has a chance of working. Part 4 is about the main characters putting everything together and using their knowledge and skills to fix the problem for good. No new important characters can be introduced, and no new information should be added to change the characters' goals. We work with what we have already. Also, do remember that your protagonist should be the main catalyst for the story's resolution. And there you have it. I tried to make this as simple as possible, but keep in mind that story structure can be very complex. You can dive a lot deeper into each of the topics that I mentioned today. I just wanted to give you a brief overview of what story structure is about. I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your time. Guys, this is my first video. If you have any suggestions or questions, please leave them in the comments. I will have more to come. But for now, I don't really have any other videos to recommend for you. So click around here somewhere. I'm sure YouTube will recommend you something interesting to watch. But in the meantime, that's it. See ya.